Good afternoon and welcome to the show, New Life Recovery. If I think better, I do better. Have with us the one and only Mr. Bob Dashiell, attorney at law. I have a question for you, Mr. Bob. Are you ready for this? I was up last night past midnight talking with a mutual friend about what happens, and this show is about mental health. What happens to our country if a Donald Trump gets elected?
Well, I have a prior question, Donnie, and that is, what is the basis for the support that at least is reported for Donald Trump's election? Because that problem, that if it's a mental illness, that condition existed both before Donald Trump, and it will continue to exist whether Donald Trump is elected or not. He is not the problem. He is a manifestation of the problem. So we got to address that issue. What is the mental condition? What is the state of mind of, and who in fact are those people? Who's in that group of Maganites, if you will? And why do they affiliate with that group? But even more, Donnie, if that group includes, if the Maganites includes QAnon, if the Maganites include KKK, if the Maganites include Proud Boys, if the Maganites include all the groups that we know, both historically and today, are the antithesis of equality for Black people, then why are Black people? Why are there so many? So apparently, Black people who are willing to become and acknowledge that they are a part of that group, along with Trump. So we got two. And my thesis is that both groups are suffering from the same illness. That the groups of the white folks who are part of the Maganites and the group of the Black folk who are part of Maganites are suffering from the exact same mental disorder. And that is, and it all emanates from the concept of white supremacy.
That's what I said. That's what I said in my comments last night in the private conversation, that it's fear. Just down earlier, a couple days ago, I saw this thing about the Fearless Fund and the lawsuit that the conservatives brought. And it brings to mind fascism. And I had to go and look up the word, but it's rooted in far right.
It's deeper than that, Donnie. It's rooted in the fact that the white people in this country and Black people who have never accepted the fact that Black people are human. It's rooted. We're not. It's much more than a class issue. It's much more than just a racial issue. It's an issue. In other words, we are not looked upon as having the same value as human beings. Yeah, the Dred Scott decision was never really overturned. We are still regarded as 3/5 of a human being. And that is the genesis, that is the root cause of that's the foundation of white supremacy. And for years, if you know as well as I do, that for years, scientists backed that theory. Scientists offered proof that Black people were biologically necessarily inferior to white people. Well, there are plenty of people now who still believe that science that backs that up. Even if there's no science, they believe it anyway because they want to. So it's not a question of politics. It's not a question of I like argument. And a problem, of course, is that when we were fighting for so-called civil rights, when the issue was human rights. And the reason we opted for civil rights is because that was the course of least resistance. That was the course that we figured that that white folks were more likely to allow us some recovery on. They were more likely to acknowledge and to afford us some level of equality, but not on human rights. You're still not a human. You're still not equal to me as a human being. We'll give you civil rights because you live among us. And we'll give you civil rights because after all, we still feed our dogs, don't we? We still treat our animals favorably, don't we? That doesn't mean we regard our animals as equal to us. It just means we're kind and generous and passionate towards lesser beings. We accepted that, Donnie, in the context of civil rights. We never, ever have ever challenged the notion of white supremacy. That is to say that white folks are necessarily more human than we are. We've never really challenged it. And that is the problem that we're facing today. That is the issue that we're facing today. Because civil rights can be given and taken away. Human rights can't. Civil rights can be given and taken away by those superior beings. Human rights can't because they're given by God.
So when the Republicans under Trump took abortion and made it illegal, any thoughts on the impact of that on the psyche? Because now women in certain places, it's illegal for them to get an abortion. What happens to the psyche? What happens to the mind? What happens to what a person goes through, a woman in this case?
Well, first of all, it's a red herring. The whole issue of abortion is a red herring. It's a red herring because the reality of it is most people agree on the fundamental principle, agree on it. Let me go back. The Supreme Court did not abolish abortion. What they abolished was a federal right to abortion. They said the states are free to either permit it or not to permit it, but they said there's no constitutional right to abortion at the federal level. That's what was abolished. That's what turned around Roe v. Wade. But with respect to the issue of abortion, we lived at a Primrose Road, the yellow brick road. Everybody agrees on the following two things. When I say everybody, I mean nearly everybody. Everybody agrees that a woman who's been raped, who's been the victim of incest, who's been the victim of any kind of involuntary pregnancy, has a right to terminate it. Nobody disagrees with that. But we don't focus on that at the level of where we disagree. We want to talk about, well, whether you can do it after 6 weeks or 7 weeks or 7 months or 8 months or what. Yeah, we can. Those things are but we can argue about those things. But those things actually are issues that don't challenge the fundamental notion, the principle, that a woman who is the victim of incest, a woman who is the victim of rape, has a right to terminate that pregnancy. And those rights are acknowledged in almost every state of the union. Now, in some places, you can exercise that right after up to 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 14 weeks, whatever it may be. But every state in the union recognizes that right to some extent. But nobody wants to talk about that level of agreement. They'd rather continue the facade that there's this general broad disagreement because they think that somehow or another it's a woman's issue. It's not really a woman's issue. It's an issue. It's another issue of humanity. The issue of humanity. And the reason that the truth is not being talked about is because there are different reasons for promoting the false narrative that's out there of general disagreement. That's a false narrative. There are reasons for it. There's some people who want abortion, who want to abandon abortion altogether because they think that will reduce the likelihood of the right people being born. Right people being. That some will push abortion because they want abortion because they don't want the wrong people, too many of the wrong people in the population. So we come at it from different sides, and we're able to do that because nobody would talk about the area where there's really agreement to, in my opinion. Now, psychologically, I don't know how it affects a woman. If that depends on what state you live in. In a state like Maryland, the reversal of Roe v. Wade has no application at all, because Maryland recognizes the right to abortion, and it may recognize the right to abortion on a much broader basis than what I've described. You go to a state like Texas, and you got a problem. They want to lock your doctor up for talking to you about it. So there's no global or universal answer I can give to how that affects the mental state of women, because it's different from state to state.
Tell me about this nationalism rooted in Christianity that I'm seeing. Like when I turn on, I don't turn it on. It ended up when Fox News goes off. Right. Yes, I tend to watch Fox News sometimes. Right after it in the morning comes the 700 Club.
I turn it off immediately when that comes on.
Why?
Because it is not in Christianity. It's a political program. Dressed up like Christians. See, you can do a lot of things in the name and call it, but a rose is still a rose, and a fox is still a fox, and a school bus is still yellow. There's nothing Christian about what the 700 Club promotes. It's entirely political. And that's why in reality, there's a dysfunction within the so-called evangelicals, and the Christians. There's tremendous dissension within that movement, because there are people who thought they were becoming part of what was a religious principle, a religious movement, and found out that it was all politically motivated. And so now there's dissension even within that camp. Because there are people who don't want to politicize their religion, people who just want to pray and worship the God as they understand it. But there are other people who want to take religion and make it, I hate to use this, and weaponize it for political purposes. And that's what's happening. That's what the 700 Club does.
Weaponize?
Pardon?
Weaponize?
Weaponize religion. Yeah, that's a favorite term these days. We want to weaponize DOJ. We want to weaponize the court system. But in reality, the first institution that ever got weaponized was religion, and we did it first. We did it in our community first, because we said you can't win political office in the Black community unless you get the Black church behind you. So we were the first ones to promote religion, to recognize the impact of religion on politics in an affirmative way.
But wasn't that because church is the first gathering place that Blacks were sadly allowed to have, going back to the days of slavery? I mean, I was talking with Tony Draper, and she said something to me I had never thought of. She said, Black politics started in the Black church.
Well, the question is, where did the Black church start?
On the plantation.
The Black church started in our homes, in our villages, in our tents, and around fireplaces, around campfires, around any types of gathering where we were off duty long enough to start singing some hymns and humming. But that was the Black church wasn't in the mega churches. It wasn't in the big buildings. It wasn't in the edifices that we now see built all around the world. A Black church was in the hearts and minds of the Black people. And that's where everything emanates from. So it wasn't so much that politics started in the Black church. It's that everything started. Politics started in the Black church was the origin of politics. Everything started from who we were as a people. Religion, politics, church, and everything else started from who we were as a people. Now, so any organization, people, the Bible refers to humankind as sheep. That it doesn't say we're tigers or lions or elephants or anything. It says we're sheep. Apart from wool, the most common characteristic of sheep is that they can be easily led. Hold on a second.
Wow. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Robert Dashiell, attorney.
Hold on a second.
attorney at law, and I started this discussion off with asking Mr. Bob about the history of this country. What happens, particularly in our community, if Donald Trump gets reelected, and what this means for our psyche. Are we headed to the far right? Are we headed to this ultra conservative way of thinking? Some would even call it fascism. This far right thinking that is all about, at the end of the day, white nationalism. How does that impact us? What do
Hold
we
on, Don,
do?
I'll be right back.
Yes, sir. In the Black community, when this happens, what happens to our psyche? As I started off, a dear friend of mine and I were talking last night about what happens to this country. And with this show being about our mental wellness, do you think about it? Do you think about what happens if a Trump, who's promised to be a one-day dictator? How do you feel about that? We'd love to get your thoughts, your comments, but what happens to our country? Does he get to kick over all of the progress that's been made over the past decades? I mean, this is the 60th year of so many things in terms of the civil rights movement as it relates to our community. Just last Saturday, we commemorated the 103rd anniversary, if you will, of the destruction of Tulsa's Black Wall Street, which came out of an incident where a black man was accused of doing something to a white woman there in the Greenwood section of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and consequently 36 square blocks of black businesses were burned and bombed to the ground. According to one news article I saw, there are two remaining survivors of Tulsa's Black Wall Street. But Mr. Bob, welcome back. I was just alluding to Tulsa's Black Wall Street, how this past weekend was 103rd commemoration. So again, what happens to us as a country if this Trump guy gets reelected or gets elected the second time?
Well, again, I'm not expecting any.
Do we have to move?
No.
Do we have to get a passport, or will we have to fight?
Well, there's a war going on. I mean, and the point I want to make is that our battle is not about Trump. We can't fall prey to this notion that if we get rid of Trump or we deal with Trump effectively, that the battle is over. That's a trick bag. The fact of the matter is, hold a second.
You connect to your phone for your bed. And you connect to your phone. You have your email, your password.
When did the Black church start to lose its way and move from saving lives to making money? Michael, you know the answer to that. Maybe always. Maybe it was always in jeopardy of that. That's a great question, Mike. I know ATMs were a sign, Michael. When we started to see ATMs in the church, that was a sign. Made me think of Jesus going into the church, kicking over the money tables.
So I got things going on around me that, like most days, everything happens at the same time.
It's all good. We are not going to stress you at all because this is a mental health show. We want to take care of our esteemed attorney.
But Donnie, and the reason I said yes when you asked me to do this is because mental health has been far too long, not just overlooked but misinterpreted.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, sir. And I have connected to bed everything. Only need to put this line.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.
unfortunately, for mental health has been recognized and is limited to the effects of it, the manifestation of it. In other words, drug addiction, drugs of alcohol. Those are symptoms. Those are manifestations of the real mental health. Everybody black is at best schizophrenic. We got to be true. First of all, whether we like it or not, we got to be true to our nature, even if we don't know what it is. Second of all, we got to try to succeed in a world where we're told that in order to be successful, we got to be like somebody else, which is contrary to our nature. So the mental illness in the black community begins almost at the time of birth, right? And it's manifested in things like anxiety, things like stress, things like depression. Those three things kill or maim more black people than all the accidents in the world, than all the heart attacks in the world, than all the other causes of death and disability in the world. And the reason why they're so prevalent is because, for the most part, they're unrecognized, undiagnosed, and untreated. That's the truth of the matter. But we're born to be schizophrenic. We're born into a world that, for the most part, denies our humanity. We can't, and we are who we are. As I tell people all the time, God is not colorblind. We are different, not by accident, but by design. No, we weren't born black, and other people weren't born white. We were just born different colors. We, humanity, people, created black and white as social constructs. Because we attach to them certain value judgments about humanity. We attach to the color black that meant inferior. The color black that meant something bad or darkness or evil. We attached that to it. God didn't do that. We attached to the white as snow, pure as the driven rain, pure as the driven snow, with everything right. Today, even in 2024, I submit, if we put the black doll test, if we put two dolls in front of young black kids, one white with good blonde hair and blue eyes, one black with dreadlocks, and I guarantee you that the majority of those kids, even today, would pick the white doll. Even today in 2024. Donnie, the truth, when I tell people this, maybe they believe it, maybe not. When I was a young child, in elementary school, I remember this so vividly. I went to an all-black school, and the thing was, if you're white, you're right. This was the mantra in the all-black school. If you're white, you're right. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back. That's what we went by. And I was black. If you couldn't tell, I was black. I remember going to bed at night, Donnie, and praying to God that by the time I woke up in the morning, I would be white. Because even as a child at that age, I recognized that white was right. My own people told me that every day in school. The little girls told me that I wouldn't yell. I didn't even have good hair. Closest I ever came in my life to having good hair was Jerry curl. Nobody wanted that because it was too greasy. Right? So, and I'm telling you, so I grew up, and my grandmother said, well, you got to be twice as good. Well, what is she telling me? She's telling me what I am ain't good enough. And she did that as a survival mechanism. I understand that. I don't fault her for it. She lived to be 100 years old, or 4 days short of 100 years old. I don't fault her for that. She was more concerned. She wanted me to survive. I'm never going to fault. That woman demonstrated more love and compassion than anybody ever has. But the fact is, her survival, as she understood it, meant that I had to learn how to be successful in a world in which I did not have any control over. That's how I had to learn how to succeed in spite of that, in spite of my blackness.
So
go ahead.
We're dealing with, I mean, because we use this term intergenerational or generational curses or generational trauma.
Yeah.
Going forward, I know you have grands.
Yeah.
How, big brother, do we undo the damage? How do we reverse or undo the trauma or heal the trauma? Or what is the proper language to even speak about this?
Well,
I've been to places, you've been to places. I remember, and no slight, I was only there a couple of days. I remember being in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I remember it being different. I remember the black people there and their mentality was different than what I was used to in Baltimore. And we don't know, oh my goodness. We are so often we are so hypercritical of Baltimore. But I submit to you, Mr. Bob, Maryland, we are some of the strongest black people in the world.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So just anything on the generational trauma.
Well, unfortunately, some of us will never leave the desert. We're not gonna make it, right? Some of us are the roots are so deep that they can't be. It's like that group that wanted to go back to Egypt when they got to the desert. It was too hot, and they turned their back on their God as they believed. And God said, I can't deal with this. Your children will come out, but you're gonna be here 40 years.
And that was to let the old ways die out.
That's exactly right. Our hope is in the future, and the future is in the ones the future is in the ones who we can teach today, who are teachable. Now, the most teachable are the ones who don't have to unlearn something that they think they already know. So that means the children. There are those older than children maybe some who listen to this program who stop to think about it. A year from now, they remember something that they heard and say, "Oh, that's what that meant." I don't know, but I do know there will always be a remnant because I'm told that, and because there's a remnant, that also means there will be those that don't make it, because remnant means what's left after something else is gone. So it's it's going to be a long process, and that's why and so the idea, Donnie, that if we can't see the results in our lifetime, that it means it's not worth pursuing. That's another fallacy. I'm not thinking about what's best for black people to make today or tomorrow. I'm thinking about what's best for black people in the year 2500. Or 2600, beyond the life even of my grandchildren. Because I recognize I'm only here for a short time. And all of us ought to recognize we're here for a short time. And nobody should think that with the short time that we're here, the world's going to change. Why would you think that? Why would you think that? Well, look how long the world was here before you got here.
You brought up the incident of that experiment with the black doll and the white doll.
Yeah.
And so it pushes me to ask you, in your life, have things gotten better? Has racism reduced? Or are we headed to civil war?
Well, the first, like everything else, the struggle begins at home. And do I think it's better than it was? Yeah, the evidence of it being better is the fact that we're able to have this conversation. That's the problem. That's one evidence of it being better. we're able to have this conversation, and we're able to have a frank conversation about it. And that's something. I don't know if we would have had that heard this 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago. I mean, I don't know. The problem is we stopped talking after the so-called civil rights era died. We almost stopped talking to each other after the civil rights era died. And why did the civil rights era die? Because it had no place to go. It had no place to go. You started off going someplace without deciding where you were going to be, where you wanted to be when you got there. Now, who does that? What people joins a movement that at the end of the day, you're supposed to be invisible? You're supposed to assimilate into obscurity. Why doesn't that work? Because that wasn't God's plan. We were made to be different for a reason.
I want to go to this. Michael, this is Michael Randolph, originally from Sandtown. Now he's down in Tampa. Uh-huh. He brings up the Portuguese, and it's an excellent point. Columbus crossed the waters in 1492. He got financed by Spain and Portugal. We know that the Moors dominated that whole Iberian Peninsula, Portugal, Spain, for 800 years. And as they chased out the last Moors and took over the Alhambra, the castle, Isabel and Ferdinand and Isabella, I imagine there was this whitewashing that began to take place, and couple that with the slave trade. It's almost like there was this effort made to this. I mean, you talk about it all the time. This notion of white supremacy, and maybe Michael's point is very on point as to where it started. Is that the why it started? Because prior to 1400s. Blacks were royalty across Europe. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm asking you your thoughts on the history of racism, how it all came about. Why did someone feel the need to feel superior? But yet I look at tanning salons, I look at lip injections, I look at butt injections, all of these things to emulate a people that somebody supposedly hates.
Well, I see. First of all, racism and slavery are not synonymous. I mean, the black folk who were kidnapped, there were no slaves kidnapped. They didn't become slaves till we got where we were taken to. There were just men and women that were kidnapped. And the idea that in many civilizations, there was tribal warfare, and the men and women were assigned tasks by the conquerors but they weren't distinct. The distinguishing factor wasn't based on the humanity. It wasn't because they were less human. It's just because you lost the fight. There are consequences of winning and losing. You just lost the fight, not because you were not human enough, because you weren't strong as I was. You didn't have the same weapon I had. You didn't. I ambushed you. When you were asleep. That had nothing to do with you not being a human. And once I did that, once I had a plan to get a group of people and make them work for me, the first thing I got to be able to do is identify them. So it's only natural that what is the most identifying feature of a human being? It's the biggest organ in the body. It's the skin. It's easily identifiable. Doesn't mean I don't regard you as a human, but I'm identifying you as that because now I know what group of humans is supposed to be working for me. It's no different than wearing a name tag. Now, there are other people who were once indentured servants who the name tag was removed from. That was a time when the Jews were slaves to the Romans, for example. Right? There were indentured servants all throughout Europe, but indentured servitude for white non people who you couldn't identify by color, indentured servitude for them ended But it didn't end for the ones who you could identify by color because there was too much money in it. There was too much profit in it. It was too easy to do. It was too easy to do. Yes, Portugal was only behind England in terms of the number of slaves that were people that were kidnapped and forced into slavery. Most of the Portuguese, most of the people that Portugal kidnapped wound up in South America, in Brazil, not in this country. But yet it was the second largest kidnapper of its time. But that's not where racism started. That's not where racism. When we talk about racism as this, we're talking about a uniquely American concept. When we talk about slavery, we're talking about a uniquely American concept. And the fact our inferiority as human beings is reflected in the fact of denial of our rights, even as citizenship, as stakeholders in the country. Everybody else who got here, except us, became a citizen when their feet hit the ground. Everybody else except us became a citizen if they were born here. We had the right. We had to wait till the 13th Amendment, according to those popular beliefs. I reject that. I reject that. Out of hand. But that's what we teach our children. And so we start them off thinking, we start them off with a position of inferiority. Because anything that man can give you, right, man can take away. So this is it's a lot. And I'm not the first. Don't, and you know that. You've read as much as I've read. You've talked to as many people I've talked to. You understand as much as I understand. But our problem is we don't know. We have no mechanism within our community for group conversation. Effective memory for group. And the church, which was a venue where it could happen, unfortunately, the church has been co-opted for the most part. We got too many pimps in the pulpit. We got too many pimps in the pulpit these days. Because the corollary, along with everything else that's going on, is the notion of capitalism. Capitalism feeds on a classification of people, one the master and one the servant. Capitalism requires that there always be a group of poor people. And the groups are always better if you can identify who they are. And it's always easier to identify them if the largest organ in their body is the most visible organ in their body, which is the skin. So then in the final analysis, we have to move it on parallel tracks. We not only have to establish our humanity, but we have to get rid of the thing that most ensures the continuation of the principle of our lack of humanity, which is greed in the economic system that rules the world. Greed. That it is unconscionable. It is unconscionable that one person can spend $50 million for a primary election to become, when somebody else who's working 3 jobs has to work 3 jobs to keep a roof over their head in a country that we call free. That's unconscionable. It's unconscionable. And not just because David Troan is white, but it's unconscionable for Oprah too. It's unconscionable for Robert Smith too. It's unconscionable. We have to have. We're on a ship called the Titanic, and people keep arguing about what deck you're going to be on or what chair you're going to sit on. Hey, you arguing about the grease fire in the kitchen when the whole house is on fire. The house is burning down. If we don't if we don't change the economic system so that a working person can earn enough to support their family, then nothing else will really matter. Because the family, no matter, the thing that's never changed in the history of mankind, is still the basic human unit of organization is still the family. That's never changed. And it never will.
I got it. I have to ask you, and this has been
Yes.
on my mind lately, about Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. I saw yesterday someone referred to him as Clarence Thomas. How does a black man get to where he is? What do you think is happening in his mind?
He was told the same thing and taught the same thing I was taught, that the measure of success is the extent to which you become more and more like white people. Now, since he couldn't change colors, just like I couldn't, that means acceptance by white people. The level of your success is based upon the extent to which white people recognize you and accept you into their world. He drank the Kool-Aid. All of us drank a little bit of it, but some of us spit it out. Some of us spit it out. And some of us passed it. It passed right through and didn't touch our vital organ, i.e. our soul. But the ones who allowed it to be absorbed into the soul are the ones who we're going to have to leave in the desert. Because I don't know, if we don't have a soul, there's only one that can cleanse a soul. And I'll leave that there. That's above my pay grade. But Clarence Thomas is an anathema. But there's a bunch of Clarence Thomases. There's too many of them within our community. That's our problem. There's too many, and we applaud them. The minute somebody come to Baltimore and the Sun Paper or Channel 2 or WJZ put them on television and say, look who this new black leader is, whether it's Calvin Butler or Joe Blow, we can't wait to go to Martin's West and have a banquet and make them the keynote speaker. What have you done for our community? Not a damn thing. What do they intend to do for our community? Not a damn thing. Well, why do we applaud them? Why do we worship them? Because we believe that they have been accepted by white people, which is where we want to be. That's what we were taught to be.
I'm getting ready to get deep for you.
Okay.
And I gotta ask the question.
All right.
That's what my daddy says, son. You gotta be able to ask the tough question.
Okay.
Barack Obama, Wes Moore, possibly Angela also Brooks. What do we expect of them?
The question is, do I believe that one or either of them, in their heart, in the area of the body that really counts, is either of them really black, as I understand? Because as you know, black to me is certainly more than skin color. It's a heart condition, not a skin condition. So do I believe that do I believe that to the extent I know any of them? I've never met Barack Obama, but I can tell you, my opinion of his 8 years in office is that he falls well short of what the black community deserves or was expecting. If you know that in 2012, Barack Obama, in 2012, more black people voted literally in that election than white people. What does that mean? If Barack Obama had gotten every black vote, and he didn't, I'm not saying that he did, but if he had gotten every black vote, he'd have been president if he got without a single white vote. That means that's a reflection of the expectation that black people had for him. That was a reflection of the assumption that black people made, that because of his skin color, his heart was in the same place. Not so. Not so. Because you can't have your heart in the right place unless you want to advance black folk as a unit, as a group. It's not individual. We always had individual black people that succeeded. Even in the worst times of slavery, we had black millionaires, we had black billionaires, but that didn't help black. And the only time that it helped black people as a class was during Reconstruction, because that's all we had to deal with one another. And we were sufficient. And that's what frightened white folk amongst the bombs Tulsa. The notion that the people that you brought here to be your slaves could actually not just survive, but in fact prosper in spite of everything that you did to them, That's some scary crap. That's scary. That's what scared white people. And that's what continues to scare them. But they don't have to be as scared now as they were after Reconstruction, because based on integration, we now are able to go where the ice really is colder. We can go to Ruth Chris now. We ain't got to go to Sampson's no more. We can go Sampson's because one thing, it's closed. That's why it's closed. We can go to Ruth Chris now, and hold on a second. I'm there. I gotta call you back. We can go to McCormick and Smith. We can go to, or we ain't no more Cess's. Ain't no more Sampson's. It ain't no more of these other little restaurants that we used to have and rely upon. Why do we need them anymore? We can go where the white folk go now. We can get my money is just as good as theirs. I ain't got as much, but I can prove to you I'm just as good as you because I can spend it the same way you spend it in your stores, not mine. In your stores, in your place of business, not mine. I can prove to you that I'm just like you because I can spend my money the same place you spend your money. In your stores, from your businesses, not mine. People say something about, the dollar circulates 19 times in this community and 6 times in this community. You know why it only circulates 6 hours in the black community? Because those goods and services that we need are no longer owned by black people. The stores are still there. The buildings are still there. The products are still there. The need is still there. But they ain't owned by us no more. Because we got too big-headed to work in the little corner store. We got too proud to go work on the farm that our parents struggle to keep. We got too educated to take over the little business that our parents try to use to support us. We have arrived. We can go where white people go now. And so much so that we don't even have to bother taking the time to tell our children how we got here. Because it's irrelevant now. They don't need to know our history. They don't understand that if you don't know your history, then it's not only that you can't plan a path for your future, but if you don't know your history, you can't develop the proper value for who you are and your people. Every group of people from civilization always had a group who had within their group a group that would have one mission, which was just to teach the children about who they were, who they are, and what their rightful place was in the world. That's the only thing that they had to work. Doing anything else, they had to go out. That was your job, because they understood that teaching the children who they are and who were their place in the world was absolutely critical to maintain the integrity of their people as a people. And the survival of the people, what civil rights taught us that once integration came along, our history became irrelevant. We need it no more. We arrived now. And we accept individual accomplishment as group advancement, and it never was and never will be. That's why I say, look, to protect the family, for minority business, and I'm an advocate for minority business, right? I can care less who owns the damn company. What do I care about? Who's working? Who you hired to work for you? Because I don't care how much people talk about entrepreneurship. The great fact is, the unassailable fact is, most people are going to achieve economic stability at all by working as employees for somebody else. That's a fact. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have entrepreneurs. I'm not sure that we should. Obviously, we should have our businesses, but the value of the business to our business is the same as it was during Reconstruction. That we give each other jobs, and not just that we give each other jobs, but we give each other jobs that at a level where we can support our families. That's the importance of a business. Not how many Center Club memberships you can buy. Not how many Bentleys you can park in your driveway, not how many square feet are in your house or how big your pool is. But who are you helping? Whose family are you helping to support?
I gotta get your thoughts on this.
Right.
Our dear friend, Dr. Michael Zolikoff, he's been on this show. And thank you for coming on. Thank you for pouring into us. Our owner wasn't able to join us today of New Life Recovery, Ben McCormick, but he has this 100-room hotel down here in the 100 block of St. Paul Street. He provides a shelter for people suffering with addiction and others. But what do we do moving forward? How do we, you know, what's the message you want us to pass on to our children?
We have to learn to love ourselves, because that's the first step to learning to love our brothers and our sisters. And without the love of ourselves and our brothers and sisters, we cannot achieve, we cannot succeed.
How do I know I'm loving myself?
Because you think of somebody else first. That's how you know you love yourself. That's how you know you love yourself. You think of somebody else first, because you put yourself in their place. You swap places. You treat them as you would have them treat you. That's how you know you love yourself.
Profound. That's profound.
I didn't create it. I didn't make it up. It didn't begin with me. It's in the book. It's in the book.
That book has been weaponized.
Yeah.
And we've talked, you should see these comments. Angela Williams, I thank you for pouring into this today. Segregation assisted some to build a legacy. Integration dissolved that building. Is it too late?
No, it's never too late.
It's not too late, Angela.
It's never too late, because you ain't got nothing better to do than spend your life, the rest of your life, trying to rebuild it. You know, David didn't build the temple. Solomon did. It was his idea. David had a great idea, but he didn't build it. And he didn't get mad because he didn't live to see it built. Because he knew he had trained his son well enough that he could die knowing it was going to happen. The world don't have to change during my lifetime. What I have to do is spend my lifetime trying to change it.
Mr. Bob, why don't you take a minute before we close out and just thank you. I thank you, and I'm going to keep calling you. I don't know what's different. I know you got a different computer system because we were having some challenges in the years past, but
yeah,
tell them what you do and tell them why they need to hire your law firm. And thank you for supporting me for years. Thank you for not just business-wise, but as a big brother, as a father type figure. And I just love the history that you pour into us. I'm always fascinated with your stories of the Eastern Shore, home to Harriet Tubman, home to Frederick Douglass.
I'm a lawyer, and my specialty is in the area of procurement. And what that means is I try to help companies that are seeking government contracts at both levels, at all levels, local, state, and federal. And the reason I do that is because it is my firm belief that most people, if they achieve financial stability, it's going to come because they got a job working for somebody, and that's not a bad thing to have a job. But if I can help companies that are willing to pay the people a salary and benefits sufficient to support their families, then that's in fact that is my goal. And my clients are not limited to Black companies. I would say 30-40% of my clients are white. But and if you called up today, they say, well, what did Bob Dashiell tell you? They told them the same thing I told a Black company. And it doesn't matter, because the truth doesn't have a color to it. The truth is the truth. And there is a truth. I don't care what Rudy Giuliani says. I don't care what Kellyanne Conway says. There is no such thing as alternate truth. There is only the truth. And it's the truth for everybody that will listen to it. And for the white clients that I have who don't want to hear it, they go find another lawyer. But if I ever had a client that left, it was a black client that left first. Because it challenged their whole belief system and what they thought was important. And that's okay. That's okay. I'm done it. My thing is I haven't done all that I want to do, and I haven't done. I don't even know what it is. I will ultimately. I'm just trying. I've been given, I think, a task order, a mission, and I'm doing the best I can to try to fulfill it for the time I have left. And when I'm gone, somebody will say, if they only say he did the best he could in the time that he had to do it in, then I'm okay with that.
Well, I got one more question for you.
Okay.
Because this show is about mental health. If I think better, I do better. First, Angela asked if you know the Smacks on the Eastern Shore, the Smacks family.
I do not. I know a lot of what part of if they're from Salisbury or Wicomico County, but that's not a name I'm familiar with. The Eastern Shore is a long stretch from Ocean City all the way up to whatever. So I know the answer is no. I don't know the Smacks.
I know they got the biggest damn mosquitoes I ever seen in my
life.
Life.
Oh man, don't talk
about the biggest crabs, but they had the biggest mosquitoes. Lord have mercy. But here's your final question.
I was going to give you a mosquito question, but go ahead. A mosquito story, but go ahead.
What'd you think when you heard the bleach blonde, bad built Butch body comment?
I said, go ahead, sister. Go ahead, sister. I wish Katina Jackson had said that during her Senate confirmation. Katina Jackson during her Senate confirmation hearing. She had nothing to lose. Her appointment was going to be affirmed regardless, and she didn't have to be nice to white folk. And people said, well, wow, she had to watch what she said. Damn that watch what she said. What you had to remember is that there were little black girls listening. And look, we need something we want something to be proud of. We're strength. So and unabashedly and unapologetically black is what we need to be, because our children are watching us. And I tell people, you can have me come to your school way across Baltimore and talk to people all day long about kids all day long about what it means to be a lawyer, but I'm not the one they're watching every day. They're watching their parents. They're watching their neighbors. And if they see their parents and their neighbors struggle following what they're supposed to be the right path, guess what? They ain't gonna follow that path. And they're certainly not gonna do it because Bob Dashiell says so. We have to give them people in their lives that they look up to and they respect and that they emulate. And that begins in the home and the parent. That's why the parents got to be there at night to try to teach them, help them with their homework. That's why the parents got to be there at night to try to tuck them in bed. That's why the parents can't be working a second or third job wondering who's watching the kids. I'm done. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm always happy to try to do this, because we don't get a chance all that much just to talk to each other and talk in frank and open terms. And that's where faith comes by hearing. Faith comes by hearing.
So Angela says her people are near Ocean City, Berlin, Maryland. He was the first black on the council and the barbecue stand and drove the bus.
I know Ocean City very well. When I was a kid coming up, black folk could not walk the boardwalk in Ocean City. In fact, we couldn't stay in the rooms. The only place the black person could be in Ocean City when I was coming up was in the little cubby hole underneath the hotel, because we were the ones doing the cooking.
I never felt comfortable in Ocean City. The last time I was there, my son needed me to take him there. I've never felt comfortable there. Actually, I felt more comfortable in Jordan in the Middle East than I did in the United States.
And there's a reason for that.
That's a whole other show.
All right, I see.
Thank you, Mr. Bob. If I think better, I do better. This is the New Life Recovery Show. My name's Donnie Glover. We'll be back Friday, 12 noon. Have a great day, everyone. Good afternoon.